What else you got, Jen?
Current events. There's not a bunch of cool stuff happening right now.
Is our energy low? We're okay.
No, man, we're just hanging out.
Yeah, we're just chilling, baby.
As most of you already know, Brendan Schaub is being sued for a business deal gone wrong. It's not about copyright strikes or defamation claims or some clip of him throwing his lawyer and business manager under the bus on a podcast and then walking it back in court like an 8-year-old who got found out. This time, it's about money, paperwork, ownership, and the one thing Brendan Schaub has never, ever handled well, pretending to be a business shark. If you've been following this saga on my main channel and this Bites channel, you already know the basic outline. Brendan got involved in a CBD company, he flaked on the promo he got paid $370,000 for, and things went south. But what's playing out in this lawsuit isn't just another bad deal, it's potentially something else. Something that suggests Brendan wasn't just caught up in the chaos. He may have been holding the match. And we all know that of all people, Brendan should stay the fuck away from matches. By the way, for those wondering, he got served the same day my first video dropped, just not in the usual way. A process server went to his house in Texas, didn't find him home, left a message with the guy who answered the door, but in a twist so aggressively on brand it probably deserves its own video, Brendan called the guy back and offered to meet at a pizza shop. Not a lawyer's office, not even the back of the storage unit studio. Instead, he went for the full, here's your subpoena with a side of mozzarella sticks energy. Maybe Brendan really is a business shark after all. He combines civil litigation with a slice of pizza, business and pleasure. But the deeper you go into the filings, the stranger this whole thing gets. There are signatures, payouts, internal votes. There are conflicting timelines, emails that don't line up, and at least one billionaire in the background who, if we're being honest, makes the whole thing feel less like a business dispute and more like an Eastern European subplot from a James Bond movie. But even that's not the weirdest part, because buried in this mess is a single detail, one small but critical piece that for some reason just isn't there. And if that piece is missing because Brendan fumbled it, that's one thing. But if it's missing because someone else never got it in the first place, then this whole case might be built on a lie, a technicality that could work in Brendan's favor and completely free him from liability. So, I'm going to give you the full breakdown on this missing piece in Brendan Schaub's lawsuit. It's not a clip, it's not a meme, it's not a panic text from a burner phone, a real piece of the puzzle I'm talking here, the one thing that might prove Brendan Schaub knew exactly what he was doing, or might explain why he's scrambling to act like he didn't. Damn it, I'm hard.
It's like a tsunami.
Yeah, our buddy was in his larger helicopter helping rescue workers. He hovered basically at 50 feet for 16 hours over 2 days, exhausted. But I said, you see any bodies or anything? He goes, dude, it's like we're looking for a needle in a needle stack. You can't see anything in that rain and stuff.
A needle in a haystack.
They were just picking up and dropping off rescue workers, dropping them off on sandbars, picking them up from sandbars. I mean,
at some point in every Brendan Schaub lawsuit, there's a moment where he pretends he had no idea what was going on, that he was just showing up, shaking hands, and letting his team handle the business. Classic thick boy strategy. Act like the world's dumbest CEO and hope the court agrees. But in this case, Brendan doesn't get to play dumb because we've got the texts, we've got the emails, we've got a drafted affidavit, and for a brief moment, Brendan Schaub looked like he was about to tell the truth. It's early 2022. Brady Bell has been pushed out of Pure Spectrum. There's been a corporate takeover. A new investor has stepped in, a guy named Pavel Cherkashin. He's a Russian venture capitalist, allegedly worth billions of dollars, living in Silicon Valley, investing in blockchain startups, and according to Brady Bell's filings, helped bankroll the scheme to vote him out and seize control of the company. Take a look at this conversation between Brady Bell and Brendan, which basically explains how this whole battle for control started. Bell sounds pretty pissed off. He's ranting to Brendan about the Russian financial backers making threats, intimidating shareholders, manipulating management, and demanding payment for their outstanding loans. At one point, Bell even tells Brendan the Russian investors are calling some of my shareholders and talking shit on me. Later, he adds, they only have a promissory note, but they played KGB games and contacted 3 shareholders who they knew and tried to make me sound like a dick for not paying on time. Brendan's not pushing back, he's not laughing it off, he's not even defending himself, he's just absorbing the heat, trying to stay clear, try not to piss anyone off. When Brendan asks how much equity the Russians have, Bell replies they don't own any stock, just a promissory note, low-grade pressure move. And when Bell vents about the drama, Brendan drops this fucking gem. KGB def trouble, my man. Lol, let me know what we need to do. Let me translate that. Brendan Schaub wants absolutely no smoke. This isn't bravado. This isn't Bupper the business shark energy. He's not even going to ask them if they've got a gun. This is a man getting dragged into international startup beef and immediately trying to cover his own ass. Later, Bell tells him these guys are demanding $1.6 million. Brendan doesn't push back. He doesn't question it. He just says, that's good. 1.6 in the grand scheme of things isn't too bad. Because when you're in over your head and the guy you're texting is calling your new business venture partners KGB fucks and comparing the company to a pressure campaign, you don't argue. You nod along and hope no one screenshots the thread and posts it online. And this is the part people miss. Brendan didn't mastermind this. He didn't lead it. He wasn't calling the shots. He was the useful idiot. He ended up getting caught in the middle of this battle between Brady, Bell, and the Russians because he allegedly signed a document claiming he still owned equity, even though by his own account, he gave up that ownership in 2021. That document was then used to help remove Brady Bell as CEO, supposedly by the same Russians they were just talking about in those text messages.
Big boy. Can you eat them?
You cannot eat them.
So then, after all of this went down, Brendan started panicking. He tells Brady he wants to make things right. So Bell sends him a draft affidavit, a statement Brendan can sign to clear it all up. It says Brendan didn't own any equity at the time, that he regrets signing the document that ousted Bell, that he was used as a pawn by the new investors. But Brendan didn't want to go that far. He asks for edits. Specifically, he wants 2 things removed. Any mention of the Russian billionaire Pavel Cherkashin and anything that might sound like he's admitting guilt. Total bupper move. He wants to clear the air, but without actually naming names or taking responsibility. But then he just bails completely. And look, maybe that fear is real. Maybe he genuinely thought some guy with Kremlin ties was going to send a black van to Calabasas, or maybe it was just another excuse to bail when things got serious. Like always, the second it got complicated, Brendan folded. Like a lawn chair in a pizza shop, holding a subpoena in one hand and his career in the other.
I was going to just show Brian.
I'm going to get sick.
What do you think of Khabib saying that?
I think it's AI.
Oh, thank God. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, dude, this
Our
is
friend
actually...
Kevin Bay sent me that. He's like, dude, how about Khabib? I went, and I go, buddy.
Isn't that amazing though?
It's getting so good.
It's getting better, but you can still tell.
I love Kevin Bay.
Yeah, he's the best.
I love that guy. I miss Kevin. Kevin's just great. Yeah, that's not what Khabib would never speak that way.
Yeah, he wouldn't talk like that for sure.
So here's where everything starts to wobble like Brendan's legs when he got knocked the fuck out by Roy Nelson. Let's say you're Brendan Schaub. You've signed some bad paperwork. You've watched the company you once partnered with turn into a full-blown Russian oligarch pet project. You're starting to have second thoughts. You reach out to the guy who got pushed out. You almost sign an affidavit saying you were part of the plan, and then you ghost him and say, it's all out of my hands, my man. What happens next should be simple. The lawsuit gets filed, everyone brings out their receipts, and the key piece of evidence, the one that proves Brendan had no right to sell equity in the company, gets dropped on the table, right? Except it never does, because buried in all the filings, the emails, the texts, the affidavits, there's something missing. Something that every other claim in this whole lawsuit depends on. A piece of paperwork that allegedly proves Brendan gave up his stake in the company years ago. The moment this whole timeline is built around, the reason the $100,000 deal even qualifies as fraud in the first place. It's mentioned constantly throughout the filings. Brady Bell says it was signed. Brendan refers to it in his messages. His own draft affidavit says he gave up the equity. But where's the actual paperwork? The one thing that would make this case airtight. Well, it's not there. It's not in the exhibits. It's not in the court filings. It's not listed in the Colorado Business Register. It's not attached to any motion. It's not shown in any email. The court hasn't seen it, which raises a pretty uncomfortable question. What if that document doesn't exist? Because without it, this case isn't quite so clean. If Brendan never signed anything formally giving up his equity, then this isn't a cut and dry fraud case anymore. It's a dispute over who owned what and when, which means that $100K payout in 2023 might still be shady, it might still be sketchy, it might be peak Brendan Schaub being falsely confused, but it might not be illegal. And that changes everything, because now Brendan can argue that he was confused, that he never actually walked away, that he always thought he still owned part of the company, even though he was no longer involved with the promotion side of things. Maybe he really had been misled, manipulated, strung along, just like he said in those panicked text messages. I was manipulated and not sure what the outcome is of the document I signed. That's the kind of quote that looks guilty when the paperwork's solid, and plausible deniability when it's not. And that's the problem here. This entire case hinges on an agreement that so far Brady Bell hasn't produced. It's the missing piece, and whether Brendan signed it and Bell's holding it, or Bell never got it signed in the first place, either way, it's the difference between fraud and a very dumb and very expensive misunderstanding. So let's flip this for a second. Let's pretend you're Bupper's legal team. You've read the text, you've seen the draft affidavit, you know Brendan thought he gave up his equity, or at least said he did, and then 2 years later signed a document selling it for $100K, which on its face looks like fraud. But there's one thing working in your favor. The plaintiff, like I said, still hasn't produced the signed agreement that proves Brendan actually gave up his stake. There's no final copy, no timestamp, no ink, no signature, just messages that talk about it like it happened, kind of like a vibe. And in court, vibes don't count. So your entire defense becomes one thing. Brenda never relinquished his equity in the company. He still owned his 10% stake. You tell the court Brendan was never properly removed as a member. No formal dissolution was ever filed. The company's own internal records, including their 2023 K1, still listed him as a 9.3% equity holder, and that if the company itself couldn't keep their ownership ledger straight, how was Brendan supposed to know any better? You lean into the fact that he's not a lawyer, not an executive, not a businessman. He's just a guy with CTE and a failing podcast network, and also a producer named Chin. He's not exactly a criminal mastermind. And when the plaintiff brings up intent, you hammer the fact that Brendan's version of events are still plausible, even if it's stupid, even if it's sloppy, because in a fraud case, apparently stupidity is still a defense. And when it comes to Brendan, he's really fucking stupid. It doesn't have to be convincing, it just has to be confusing. And that's Brendan's sweet spot. Legal fog, paper trail confusion, corporate ambiguity. I mean, the guy can't even spell IMDb, and that's 4 fucking letters long. Because if there's no clear agreement showing he gave up his equity, if the I signed it part is based entirely on a draft affidavit that he never signed and some texts that he walked back, then this stops being a story about fraud and starts being a story about miscommunication, bad paperwork, misunderstood roles. In other words, Brendan's entire career. But here's the thing, if that document does exist and Brady Bell for some unknown reason is keeping it up his sleeve until Brendan files a defense, which honestly makes zero sense to me, but if he does have it and the case moves forward into discovery, Brendan is beyond fucked. Like, that would be an absolute disaster for him. Don't forget, there is so much at stake in discovery. Emails get subpoenaed, internal records come out, tax filings get cross-referenced, Slack messages, Google Drive folders, every version of the affidavit, every panicked text message about the KGB investor, all of it hits the record. And Brendan, the man whose entire strategy is blame the team, play dumb, and podcast through it, he definitely will not survive that. He doesn't want a trial. He wants this to go away, quietly, cheaply, preferably in a back room next to a pizza oven with no reporters, no discovery, and no signed paperwork surfacing under oath. Because if the missing piece shows up, Brendan's not just a guy who fumbled a business deal. He's a guy who cashed out on something he didn't own, lied to cover it up, and got caught right before the receipts hit the docket. And I called this at the beginning in my very first video on this whole lawsuit situation. I said that my view was the whole case hinges upon whether or not Brendan legally still owned his stake in Pure Spectrum. And as things stand now, there's no actual evidence that he was stripped of that ownership. But we'll have to wait for Brendan's lawyers to file a defense. I've got no doubt they'll bring into question all the things I've pointed out in this video. So until then, if you want to stay up to date on all my uploads, make sure you smash that subscribe button for this channel, then head over to my main channel, Podcast Cringe, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my uploads throughout the week. Also, don't forget to hit the link in the description to my Patreon, where you'll find all my uncensored, longer form content covering Rogan, Kill Tony, and everyone in between. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.
Yeah, I saw some clip on me and Mike Tyson just having a disagreement. And I think somehow it was like, does Brendan Schaub really think he can beat up Mike Tyson?
Well, I'll answer it. Want me to answer it?
It's like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, man. I'm trying to be cool. But if you know anything about fighting,